This time on episode 423 of Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D., we talk Moon Knight Season 1, Episode 5, Asylum. Weekly Marvel Studio news, including Kevin Feige and Marvel Studio executives having mapped out the next 10 years of MCU content. Alaqua Cox confirms Echo is now filming, and Disney Plus releasing a new Daredevil Featurette with Charlie Cox. And your feedback regarding Moon Knight comics and Tim Curry.
I'm Stephen John Drew from Better Podcasting, a podcast about podcasting, part of the Gonna Geek Network. Just like the show you're checking out now. Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find fantastic geeky shows at GonnaGeekNetwork.com.
You have been granted clearance by director Alfonso Mack Mackenzie. Stand by for a S.H.I.E.L.D. debriefing. All information to be discussed here is classified and may only be discussed among agents granted clearance by the S.H.I.E.L.D. director.
Now it's time for your scheduled debriefing. I'm Agent Michelle.
I'm Agent Chris.
I'm Consultant Anthony.
And I'm producer of the show, Director SP. Welcome to Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D., a Marvel Comic Universe fan show discussing the Marvel Cinematic and comic book universes as told on screen by Marvel Studios. The show is recorded on Thursday, April 28th, 2022, live from the Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. studios and broadcast duat-wide via www.geeks.live. Come and join our live chat as we record. Hey gang, happy National Superhero Day.
They're important enough to get their own day?
Yeah, apparently. And I think we've done this before. By the way, this day was started by Marvel Comics in 1995, the employees of Marvel Comics. So how fitting. We're podcasting on a Marvel show about Marvel Comics on National Superhero Day, started by employees of Marvel Comics.
That probably didn't see a dime of extra money for creating and promoting the holiday.
Probably not. I have some legal thoughts along those lines later after the show. Well, we should talk about that because I probably need some clarification from you on original artists' compensation. But we'll talk about that. That might be in the bonus audio after the show. Anyway, happy National Superhero Day. Michelle, you are our superhero. How are you feeling on your day?
Okay. Why would I be your superhero?
Because you make this podcast possible. Without you, this podcast would have folded years ago.
I will take your word for it. Thank you.
Okay. By the way, we do this podcast because we love talking about Marvel.
Because I don't have a card for that.
If you'd like to talk to us about cards and not having them, maybe go see if you left them on our website, legendsofshield.com.
If you get your cards mixed up and you don't know what to say next, you can leave us a voicemail at 844-THE-BUS-1. It's 844-843-2871.
If you think you can have all your cards in the right order, maybe set up a Twitter thread and be sure to tag us at Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D.
You can see us on YouTube, youtube.com/GonnaGeek.
If you're going to keep taking the missing card joke way too far, one place that would be welcome to have it is our Discord server at GonnaGeek.com/Discord.
And remember, Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. is a proud member of the GonnaGeek.com network.
Well, you heard him before. We were talking about the legalities of National Superhero Day. Anthony from Capes on the Couch has reprised his guesting on our podcast on a much needed week again. Anthony, thank you for joining us.
It's always a pleasure to be here. And for the first time since we recorded the show, I'm wearing one of my Moon Knight shirts.
Nice. It might have something to do with your new surroundings.
It might. I am in a new basement studio, basement office that is still somewhat under construction, but hopefully in the next couple of weeks, it'll tighten everything up and I'll get my sound treatment on and all that good stuff. So it won't sound quite so reverbery.
Did you move to the basement to get closer to the sands of Duat?
No, I did not. I moved down here so my daughter could have a place to sleep when she enters the world in a couple of weeks.
Yay! So exciting.
Yes, although I think the terror on my face is going to match that of Stephen at the end of the episode.
Don't worry about it. Kids turn out no matter what you do. Don't worry about it. Well, since we've taken this bit as far as we can, we have a excellent episode to talk about Moon Knight. So you guys want to talk about it tonight?
Sure.
I guess.
It might be a good idea. That is what the people are here for.
All right, let's get to it. Moon Knight Episode 5 Asylum premiered on Disney Plus Wednesday, April 27th, 2022. The IMDB description reads, Mark and Steven search through their memories to find their truth or become left behind. Chris, who directed the episode?
This episode was directed by Mohamed Diab, who has 4 directing credits going all the way back to 2010, 6 episodes of Moon Knight, and he also wrote The Island and The Island 2.
I need to change that. It's not all 6 episodes of Moon Knight. I believe it's 4 of the episodes of Moon Knight because 2 of them were directed by others. So my bad on that. I didn't correct the show notes.
This episode was directed by Mohamed Diab, who directed somewhere between 0 and 6 episodes of Moon Knight.
There you go. Michelle, we know who wrote the episode, I hope.
We have 2 writers. First, we have Rebecca Kirsch, who has 7 writing credits starting in 2014, including 21 episodes of Leverage, 2 of 12 Monkeys, 4 Dominion, and co-executive producer of 6 episodes of Moon Knight. The other writer is Matthew Orton, has 2 writing credits since 2018. Operation Final, 2018 with Oscar Isaac and Ben Kingsley, and 2 episodes of Moon Knight. And Jeremy Slater is the showrunner of Moon Knight.
He is. You know, something I've noticed, I don't think we talked about it before, but writers often get executive producer credits, especially if they've been in the writer's room all season, what is now known as the writer room anyway. And they're there to help doctor scripts and make sure that they help create the storyline and stuff like that. So to actually write an episode is one thing. And then oftentimes what happens is it'll go through a writer and then it will get a second or third pass by maybe another writer or a director or something like that. And then the final pass for any script is often the showrunner. So Jeremy Slater has been looked at all of the scripts before shooting starts on them. And then it's in the hands of the director, and then it's in the hands of the post-production editing team. But the original script is often written by 1 or 2 people, and that's what we had in this case. We've been talking about the Moon Knight main cast as we go along. This week we added a few actors. I don't know if they'll translate into the finale next week or not. But the first one that we'll talk about is the voice behind Tawaret, and that was done by Antonia Salib. I looked in IMDb. This is her only credit, and being her only credit, I think she did an amazing job. And as I was telling the gang before we went online here, I think she did great wearing the suit this episode.
Yeah, it was interesting to see that the ears wiggle. I was impressed by that.
Yeah. A little bit of animatronics going on there.
I don't even want to think about how long she had to sit in the makeup chair for that one, though.
Hours. She also had to put really high extensions in her shoes, Tom Cruise style. We're just kidding. I believe the character was entirely CGI, but I don't know about that. Michelle, who played Wendy?
Wendy was played by Fernanda Andrade, who has 41 acting credits since 2000, including Fallen in 2006 movie, 2 episodes of Sons of Anarchy, the film The Devil Inside, which was 2012, 1 episode of From Dusk Till Dawn, the series, and 10 episodes of Next.
This I will say about Wendy. That is a very difficult part to play because you're probably somebody that doesn't relate to how Wendy is acting post an event that we'll talk about. And I think Fernanda did an amazing job with trying to bring that forward. And that would be difficult for me to have to play a character like this. And I would think it would be difficult for most people. So I just want to give a tip of the hat to Wendy for this. I don't know how you guys felt about the character or the acting behind the character or not, but I think it was difficult, but I think she pulled it off.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll get into exactly what it was that she had to act about, but to play that requires mining emotions that are not often utilized in that manner in acting. And so to pull that off and, as you said, be believable in it really took a lot out of her, I'm sure.
Indeed. Well, we're going to move on now to the next phase of the podcast, which is an exclusive to Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. There is an exclusive synopsis for every episode and movie that we review, which is just about every week. And this week is no exception. So you guys ready for this exclusive Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. synopsis?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Here we go. After only the second time this season playing the traditional Marvel Studios pre-roll music, and yes, I did go back and listen to each episode of the 5. There's only 2, episode 2 and 5. Mark wakes up in Dr. Harrow's office in the Putman Medical Facility, only to find out later with Steven from the hippo in their head that they are in fact quite dead. Don't worry, there's a card for this somewhere.
The talking hippo is actually the Egyptian god Tawaret, and Mark and Steven find themselves in the realm of the Duat in the afterlife, where they have just imagined the psychiatric hospital as it was more easily recognizable for them to comprehend. But we're just going to roll with that, though.
The pair find themselves sailing to Harrow among the sands of the underworld, headed to the field of reeds while their hearts are measured for balance. While plan B is to kill the hippo and steal the boat to become afterlife pirates.
With no card to tell the talking hippo what to do, Mark and Steven venture back into their memories to show each other the truth and balance their scales before the end of the journey to prevent their souls from being destroyed and the series ending prematurely despite what Kevin Feige had planned on.
Their shared trip into the dusty memories takes the viewer into a mysterious dark path that ends in child Mark taking his younger brother Roro into a dangerous cave filming with stormwater, where Roro sadly doesn't make it out.
Mark's mother, Wendy, wants her Roro back and blames Steven for the event, not sharing any joy with Mark, forcing Mark to leave the home.
Here, the viewer is exposed to Mark's memory of when he tried to save Layla's father, a mere mention of Bushman, and Mark's ultimate origin story of Moon Knight and the deal with Khonshu.
Meanwhile, outside in the Duat, unbalanced souls are tumbling to their untimely ends in a scene visually like the epic Loki Lamentus scene and with all of the equivalent horror.
Mark and Steven rush back inside the boat to balance their scales so they can return to the living, where Mark finally reveals his true secrets of an abusive mother, Steven's origins, and Wendy's death 2 months ago, which caused Mark and Steven to phase into each other.
With the gates nearing and the scale still unbalanced, a brief zombie fight ensues, resulting in Steven falling to his end, and Mark making it to the field of reeds.
Cue the music. All right, Michelle, what are your first thoughts of this episode?
And the Emmy goes to Oscar Isaac. No matter how we feel about this episode, and we all have feelings, he definitely deserves praise for his acting.
Do you remember a while ago when I said this show was probably going to be better when you could binge the whole thing? I think I was right.
This finally makes episodes 1 through 4 make a lot more sense, and it is very interesting to see what is essentially a bottle episode in the MCU.
I'm just glad I could mostly see the entire episode this time. Mostly. There was a few scenes where I had difficulty, but for the most part, I completely saw everything. Yeah, that's great. All right, Anthony, I'm sure you have tons to talk about this episode. We all surmised you must. So please take the floor. Where do you want to take us?
Well, For starters, I will say that it's interesting to see the origins of Stephen and Moon Knight in the same episode. For Moon Knight, it was not too functionally dissimilar from his origin in the comics. We get the reference to Bushman. We get the reference to a killing outside of the tomb. We understand that Layla's father died in the attack. Layla, as I had said previously, is essentially serving the function of Marlene Alrain in this version of the tale. The interesting thing for me is that in the comics, Mark is dead, whereas in the show, he is basically about to commit suicide, and Khonshu gives him the choice, versus in the comics, it's much less clear as to how much of a choice Mark had, but he was already dead either way. So that was kind of interesting to see, as well as the creation of Stephen and all of the fallout that creates.
We finished watching this, and I'm just sitting there, oh my God, oh. And I'm hating myself because I feel like the clues were sitting there in front of us the entire time, and we missed it. We had timing clues. We had things that could have been references to A Field of Reeds. So many things that I'm going to have like an Arrested Development style good time going back and rewatching this and finding everything I missed the first time.
This is definitely not the Lemire run, because I, at the beginning, was like, okay, he's dead, figured that. And then we had the deal about the hearts being balanced, and there's two. And I immediately wrote in my notes, okay, Anthony reminded us of Jake. So we're going to get Jake because we need the third heart, right? We need the third heart to make it balance, and we'll meet Jake. And then the memories started happening. And then there was no Jake now. No Jake. And this is, oh boy. Here's the thing. I've been reading some articles where the creators are like, these next two ones are going to blow your mind, and they're so this and that. This reminds me again of Mass Effect 3, there was the hype. Sometimes creators, when you hype your own things, you need to make sure that you're doing it right, because I really wasn't blown away maybe in the way you thought. My next comparison is like with WandaVision. In WandaVision, when we watched it, we had clues, we had double clues. And then when the twins came, we kind of thought with Mephisto, and with the purple energy, we thought Dark Dimension. And while some of these things didn't happen, we still got Wanda being Scarlet Witch all the time. We saw that. We saw Wanda, we saw Scarlet Witch, we saw that all the time. Now we have Moon Knight, where I think we maybe have gotten 30 minutes of actual Moon Knight action in here, maybe 45 if I'm being generous. We've had Jake teased, and in this episode, Stephen dies, and then it's balanced, meaning there's one heart, but then there's no Jake. And I'm going to say right now, like the WandaVision expectations, okay, it didn't happen, but you know what? We still got a great television show. We really had the whole like uproar. There was no metaphor and everything. That was uncalled for, not needed. But Moon Knight fans, if you are upset by the fact that one, we really haven't seen Moon Knight, and two, you were upset that Jake has been teased and did not show up in this episode, I completely understand, because I am still trying to figure out how this is a Moon Knight show and not the Mark show, because we really haven't gotten a lot of Moon Knight in this.
You are 100% correct in that. as I had said, I think it was in the first episode, it's very clear that they had a story that they wanted to tell, and they're using Moon Knight as the vehicle to do it. I will say that as it has progressed, it has gotten closer to a version of Moon Knight that I recognize, particularly from the Lemire run. And I know, Michelle, you just got done saying that this isn't the Lemire run. It's definitely not, but there's enough from there that I can see where they drew it from. What I will say is that and I know this is also one of SP's points, so I'm not going to try and step on his toes too much, but there's a lot that is still to be determined, and there's one episode left.
There is, because we ended on this big crescendo. We don't know what's happening up in the real world, right? And you've got Mark in this field of dreams. You got Steven that's been frozen in the sands of Duat. And then you haven't met Jake, and there have been hints along the way that there's definitely a third individual in the whole thing. So we still have to meet Jake. We have to be introduced to Jake. Maybe it's a coda at the end of the whole thing. I don't know. I think that would be kind of a cheap way to do it. But there's so much that needs to be, like, how are you going to defeat Harrow? Is there going to be a defeat of Khonshu along the way? Because we see what an asshole he is, right? He is completely playing Mark. Steven calls it out, like, hey, look, no, he's manipulating you, that sort of thing. So yeah, there's a lot to go on here. I want to cycle back a little bit. Both Anthony and Chris, you mentioned this, so I just want to foot stomp it. Remember back in episode 1 where I said, okay, what in this episode is going to come back? And I said the finale, but we've gotten a lot of callbacks, both in episode 4 and episode 5, to what was projected to us in episode 1. And what else from episode 1 is going to come back? I mean, Crawley, we've just seen him a couple of times. I think Crawley's going to make another appearance, I would surmise. Is Donna going to come back? Are we going to go back to the museum? Or is he going to go back and see his father? Is Mark or Steven or Jake or whoever going to go back to see his father? I don't know. There's just so much that's got to be bottled into a 50-minute episode that we'll see how they pull it off. I think now I could say, hey, look, like Chris was mentioning, the bingeability of this series makes total sense to me now. We surmised it might be. Episode 4 was just not if you're watching it week to week, in my opinion, Chris and I differ on this, but in my opinion, that was just terrible to end it on the way they did. I think they could have taken the Harrow stuff out of, well, most of the Harrow stuff out of the end of the last episode, Dr. Harrow, and you could have gotten a little bit more of Tawaret at the end, other than what the heck is this sort of thing. And you could have had her say, look, you're in the afterlife or whatever. And then you'd be, oh, what does this mean? Where are we going from here? I think that could have been done a little differently. But if you're binging it, it doesn't matter because you're automatically going into the next episode and you get all that.
I will say they just announced, somebody just posted along those lines, the last episode is going to be 42 minutes, which is the shortest episode length of the series so far. So here we are saying, how are they going to wrap all this up in an episode? And we know that finales, at least in the MCU, tend to be longer episodes. They tend to be a little extra because you have to finish so much, cram so much in. This is going to be the shortest episode. So this is going to be chock full of stuff. And I would venture to guess that episode 6 is going to open with whatever Layla was up to during all this, which means now from a chronological standpoint, you actually have to go backwards in order to advance, because we're going to see Layla. I would wager we're going to see Layla find the Ushabti room, the little Funko Pop display of all the imprisoned Egyptian gods. She's going to bust them all open, because we also see towards the end of the episode all of the unbalanced souls falling into the Duat, which means Amit is released and has begun judging folks. So to me, that's going to require a clarion call to all of the remaining gods to bind together and defeat Amit. And Layla is going to play a huge role in that. We're going to see all of the Ushabtis broken. We're going to meet the gods that have been imprisoned. And I wager that they're probably going to be pretty pissed off at how things have gone down. And then we still have to see Khonshu return, somehow give his powers back to Moon Knight Mark, resurrect him yet again. And this is going to, I hope it doesn't devolve into a big fight in front of a giant shooting sky beam, as is so often the case with a lot of these big budget blockbuster type things. But I mean, we'll see what happens. It's going to be a hell of a 42-minute ride. I can say that.
I think this is going to be intended to roll right into something else, whether that be a season 2 that we haven't been told about yet, maybe another property that will somehow connect. Who knows? I mean, Doctor Strange 2 could be a completely different thing from everything we've been led to believe.
Wow, that's a lot to shove into 42 minutes.
It is. And that's why I put the point in there is like, I don't see how we get from here to there in 40, 50 minutes. The leading into something else is interesting, especially with Doctor Strange coming out. We haven't talked about that much in the last few weeks, but as soon as this ends, Doctor Strange opens the next day. So this will stream on Wednesday. Doctor Strange comes up. In the past, we haven't seen tight overlap with the two that close. I mean, I think the closest we got was Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. back with the Captain America Winter Soldier. And even that, I think, was offset by 2 weeks because they took a week off sort of thing. So I think it's just too close to be a direct correlation to something like Doctor Strange, but that doesn't mean that it won't lead into something else in the MCU. All interesting stuff. We'll see where it goes. I mean, this has been an interesting ride so far. There's a lot of questions that we all have on it. We've all been entertained, even though I was kind of irked by the way they ended episode 4. I have a question on this episode for all of you, and I'm interested in all of your perspectives. Dr. Harrow, Arthur Harrow, was he real? Is that a real aspect? Was he getting into Mark's head? Or was that Mark's or Steven's projection of Arthur Harrow in the afterlife? I've got two schools of thought there. I'm thinking Harrow, for whatever, like the gods were actually projecting him into Mark/Steven's mind, and maybe he didn't actually shoot him. I don't know. What do you all think? Anthony, I'll let you go first. What do you think?
Legitimately, I don't know. And that is something that the best Moon Knight comic runs, and particularly the Lemire run, have been able to mine very well. You don't know what is real and what's just inside his head. And the way it's all shot, it really kind of leaves you guessing. And when we're in the psychiatric institution and Mark, and then at one point Steven are talking with Dr. Harrow, he's got the bloody, potentially broken nose, and then it cuts and he doesn't have it. Is that Jake? Is that another? Are we playing with time? Is that a different situation? Because, you know, we're kind of led to believe that this is all happening concurrently, that he's flashing between the psychiatric institution in his mind on the ship with Tawaret and the psychiatric institution with the quote-unquote Dr. Harrow. But what if it's not simultaneously that? What if these are two different time points in his life, and due to the magic of editing, we're led to believe that this is all happening concurrently?
See, the first thing I thought about when you asked that was, how was I feeling about Dr. Harrow as he was being a doctor? And as I'm watching the show, I still didn't like him. I mean, he was fine as a character, but as a person, I didn't like him. But as a doctor, it just carried over. And so I kind of thought about it while Anthony was talking there, and there wasn't really anything he did as a doctor to convince me that he wasn't somehow messing with the inside of Mark's head, because I just don't think he's a good doctor. And I really wish we had Doc here to explain, or at least let me bounce off, like, why I think that if he was my doctor, he would not be my doctor anymore.
Well, another thing that we alluded to beforehand was Wendy. And, when you're delving into Mark and Steven's memories, you see this awesome performance that she turns into somebody that's blaming her son, which causes the initial break with, or if you want to call it break, I guess creation of Steven is probably a better terminology for it. And you see her be abusive, or the insinuation that she's physically abusive with the belt and everything. And that is brought about by the trauma of Raymond or Roro dying in the cave with Mark, which then Mark thinks he's a killer for the rest of his life because of that. And he just perpetrates it going forward, especially with the sense that what his mother did. This is a way deeper. I don't think little kids should watch this necessarily. This is a really messed up character and situation here. I wish Doc was here to talk about it with Anthony, basically. I know you guys are probably going to talk about it on your show, this whole thing. I know you just did a second episode on it, but this is a deep thing for a series, Anthony.
Yeah, absolutely. This is the darkest in terms of subject matter that I've seen the MCU, certainly the shows, get, maybe with the possible exception of WandaVision and the notion of grief and things of that nature. But at one point when she was hurling the verbal abuse at Mark, I don't think she had even grabbed the belt yet. My wife turned to me and she goes, "I'm feeling sick. I don't like this at all." We have a young son, and so to see a mother figure be so abusive to him like that, as parents, just turns your stomach. The death of Randall, Mark's little brother, Randall plays a antagonistic role to Mark in the comics, that he's the younger brother. He's known as Shadow Knight or Hatchet Man. He's died, I believe, twice at Mark's hand and been resurrected. But in terms of Mark's parents, this is a bigger role than they've ever had in the comics. So much so that his mother in the comics is only known as Mrs. Spector. She's only in one issue. I believe it's of the Lemire run. Elias is a pacifistic rabbi in the comics who disapproves of his son's life choices, particularly going into boxing and then enlisting in the Marines and things of that nature. And so their relationship is continually strained. And then there's obviously the whole history of Mark's Jewish faith running up against his worship and being the avatar for an Egyptian deity. So there's that part of it. Obviously for this show, they're not really mining that as much as they do in the comics, but it was just really interesting to see how they essentially gave the trauma role, or the trauma creator role, to his mother, which certainly makes it a lot more real in terms of realism in the trauma, but also just by virtue of the fact that they took this character, much like Arthur Harrow, who'd only ever appeared in one comics. They said, we're going to take the name for this character and put it on somebody who'd had nothing to do with the comics prior. So yeah, and to your one point, SP, I don't know that Doc and I are going to do a full episode on this. Maybe we'll do a bonus episode, but I would be very curious to get Doc's take, particularly on the treatment, such as it is, that Dr. Harrow is giving Mark and Steven in the psychiatric facility. So well, stay tuned. We'll do something like that, I'm sure.
When it gets to Wendy's funeral and Mark can't even go inside, and he goes out into the middle of the street drunk, and he's just pounding the pavement and crying and everything. And then all of a sudden, kind of on the flip of a dime, Steven comes out and he's calling his mom, and he's talking to her about being lost. He doesn't know where he is, even though he's right in front of home, right? And it's just very, very heartbreaking to watch the whole thing. You really feel for both Mark and Steven throughout this. Mark is kind of brought forth as somebody that's not very good and a killer and stuff like that, but you get the meaning behind it with this episode. You also get where Steven is coming from, and you just feel for them as they're going through that particular moment, because there is nothing that he could do about his mother. His mother was going to treat him a certain way, and then she's gone, and there's just no way to get it back at that point. Just like with her, and I called Roro the wrong thing before, but with her when she loses Roro. So yeah, just a lot of tragedy in this episode, and all the time you've got Layla with Harrow, and the last time we saw them was in Alexander the Great's tomb, and you see all these bodies dropping or souls dropping to the sands, right? And it's just something's got to be done, and they know that, so they're trying to get back. Just a lot of story and emotion and plot going on throughout the whole thing.
Yeah, I don't have kids, so I can't even pretend to imagine what Mark's mother is going through there. But just seeing the way she's treating him and blaming him just breaks my heart, because I mean, I hate to say this, but I mean, he is the one that said, "Let's go in the cave, stop being a baby." So she's not 100% wrong in saying it's his fault, I guess, but it's definitely not something he did on purpose. And I'd like to think if I had kids and if something like that happened, I wouldn't be sitting there blaming them for the rest of their life and taking all my anger out on them. I think that's something where you can't really know how you're going to react till you get in the situation yourself.
They did give us a few moments of levity in the whole thing, and Tawaret was one of them. And as I'm giving a presentation from time to time, and I haven't had a lot of time to prepare, maybe I'm in front of a big crowd, and you get the stage fright, no matter how many of those that you've done, or if you're teaching a class, whatever, you have cards to go through to make sure you hit all the high points and everything. And talking about teaching, Michelle, you're a teacher. Have you ever been in a situation, Michelle, where you're teaching and if you've got cards and you're like, I know this is in here somewhere, and you're flipping through cards and everything and they're flying everywhere? You ever do that?
I've had the absent-minded professor where it's like, where's my pen? And I've had to have my students go, where's my pen? And I've been like, we're talking about photosynthesis, and I have forgotten how to spell photosynthesis. Who knows how to spell photosynthesis? You know, I've had moments like that. So I completely understood where she was coming from.
Talking about pens, I just accidentally left one in my sweatshirt from yesterday, which went through the wash. Thank goodness it was a dark load and it was a blue pen. So as far as I could tell, nothing got ruined. But yeah, I've lost a pen recently. So does that make me an absent-minded professor?
Were you doing it while you were teaching?
No.
No.
Okay.
No, when you do this in front of 30 teenagers, you know, there's, look, everybody's like, oh my gosh, it's a tough crowd. It's like the toughest crowd is a bunch of teenagers trying to teach them biology at 7:30 in the morning.
What do you think is the toughest out of the years? You think it's like 6th grade, 7th grade, 9th grade, something like that?
6th graders are jarred because they've gone from, we're in a classroom all together all day with the one teacher, to, wait, how many teachers do I have now? I have to remember all these things. Wait, well, I only have like an hour to do. Yeah, those are the ones that I find have the hardest transition when you go from like that elementary one teacher, one sort of deal into like this regimented schedule, and you got to stand up and change classrooms and stuff in a short amount of time.
Okay. Well, from a boat perspective, and I've made no secret that I watch a lot of sailing YouTube channels, I think the boat was pretty cool, although I've never had a boat that would go that fast over sand. So kudos for Tawaret for making that out of, I don't know, magic or whatever it was. So kudos on that. So we'll do predictions in a second, but I want to give everybody a chance to have their last words on the episode before we go into predictions. So Anthony, why don't you start out? What did we miss? What haven't we talked about yet?
So the one thing that I noticed and I picked up on, and I saw other eagle-eyed fans mention as well in various Moon Knight message boards and such, is Tawaret didn't say, you need 3 hearts. She just said the hearts aren't balanced. So again, to that point of alluding towards Jake as the altar, things of that nature, are we missing something? There's got to be something else there. I'm just not sure where they're going with it, but that was something that I picked up on. She could have just said, you need 3 hearts, and then it would have said, oh, the 3rd sarcophagus, let's go open that up, and then it would have been done. But of course, this being live action storytelling, nobody communicates properly, and poor communication kills, in some cases, literally.
Not all mental illness is triggered by trauma, and not all trauma causes mental illness. I really would like to move on from that trope, please. Thank you.
I have no idea where this is going, and I love it. And I also agree with Michelle. Can we just have some people that have a mental illness just because they do? I mean, I have no trauma, but I got the mental illness. So I guess in movie land, I don't have any mental illness.
Well, in movie land, that just means that you haven't found the person that cures you. You know, that if you fall in love, your mental illness is gone. It's like Benny and June.
I have. She is my wife, and that's why we're going to be getting duck tattoos, because ducks fly together.
Quack, quack, baby.
When you said Benny and June, I thought of Ben and Jerry's.
That's also good.
All right, I'll start predictions off because I have a really good one. You guys ready to hear it?
Sure.
I predict that the final episode of Moon Knight season 1, or this mini-series or whatever we're going to call it, I predict the final episode will premiere on May 4th, 2022, which, by the way, is May the 4th be with you, or also known as Star Wars Day. So Oscar Isaac gets to be on a premiere. For those of you that may not know, Oscar Isaac was a major character in the last Star Wars movies. Oscar Isaac gets to premiere an episode on Star Wars Day on Disney+. That's my prediction. Anthony, do you have any?
I said mine, where it's going to open with whatever Layla was up to, and we're going to go backwards. We're going to see Ahmed escape. We're going to see all the stuff that was happening while Steven / Mark / Jake are dead.
Okay. Chris doesn't seem to have any because he doesn't know where it's going. Michelle, do you have any predictions?
I do.
There's going to be a big fight. I don't even know if Moon Knight's going to be in the fight or not, because we really haven't seen Moon Knight since episode 3. So I hope there's Moon Knight in this show called Moon Knight. That would be great.
I didn't time it. I meant to time it. I think we got Moon Knight for like 5 or 10 seconds, somewhere in there in this episode.
Yeah, we saw the creation of him, but that was it.
Okay.
I'm going to take the cheap way out, and my prediction from last week with the Power Rangers growth fight is just going to be slid into the next episode.
All right. So that's our take on Moon Knight episode 5, Asylum. Next week, hopefully, we will get episode 6, as I alluded to before. It will air on May the 4th, 2022. And that will be one day before Doctor Strange premieres. So look for more information on that from Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. In the meantime, we have some humdingers of some Disney, Marvel Studios stories to go through. So I'm excited to go about this. Y'all excited about it?
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Michelle was so excited. She picked a story that she wanted right away. And it was the same story I wanted. So Michelle gets to talk about it first.
Well, Marvel has the next decade of MCU films already planned out, which is impressive because I don't even have the next 10 minutes planned out. So good for them. Marvel Studios president Kevin Feige promised that the next 10 years of the MCU has already been planned. During Disney's presentation at CinemaCon 2022, Feige revealed that he had just returned from an in-person retreat with the other heads of Marvel Studios, where the team mapped out what's coming to the big screen in the next decade. Quote, in the next 10 years, with existing characters and new storytelling tools, with the multiverse, anything can happen, end quote, Feige said. While Marvel Studios is also building out its television offerings on Disney+, Feige promised that its biggest stories would still be hitting theaters. More concrete, but without any firm release date or details, is the arrival of the X-Men in the MCU. Feige has made no secret that the mutants are coming now that Disney owns the film rights to the Marvel characters once controlled by Fox. But there's been no hint as to when they might pop up on the big screen. That said, it seems certain that Patrick Stewart's Professor X is in the Multiverse of Madness, so the answer to that many more questions about the MCU's future may be right around the corner.
A 10-year plan is something that I know that they had announced back when they were doing phases 1, 2, and 3, that at one point Feige had said, oh yeah, we've got everything planned out to about 2024. So I'm not entirely surprised. And given that, as Michelle had indicated, they do now have pretty much everybody under the roof, with the exception of the Spider-Man characters, they can really go all out in creating vast stories. I'll be very curious to see, though, how they're going to factor in the Fantastic Four. Obviously, I'm looking forward to the X-Men, but the Fantastic Four, I just want a good Fantastic Four movie. It doesn't even have to be great. I'll settle for good at this point.
I just want to point out that these statements were made at CinemaCon 2022, which I'd have to go in and take a look, but just because of the name, I would just venture to say that this is about in-theater movie experiences. You're talking about the actual movie industry between the creators and the movie houses. That said, I think that there's a whole bunch said in this whole thing about Disney Plus and the MCU's plan over the next 10 years to use Disney Plus, either as series, as we've seen, short series, or maybe a longer series as well. I think the full plan has yet to be told that they came up with, and you guys might differ with me. Maybe you have more information than I have, but I'm thinking that this was specifically told to movie theaters that we're going to have movies to be shown in your movie theaters for the next 10 years.
I just think Anthony's over there twisting the knife, reminding me that they don't have the spider people, because that means my Spider-Gwen is not probably in their plans. And I don't like that. But we can maybe get a Champions and a whole team led by Miss Marvel, so that's cool.
I did see some of the information. We're not going to talk about it today. We don't have a specific story about it, but Across the Spider-Verse, the 15-minute thing that they showed at the one con or whatever, and there's a bunch of information that's starting to come out of that. I think you would be very interested in that because there are certain characters that came out of that, which I will not talk about because I think they're spoilery. But I think you're going to be very happy with that film when it eventually comes out in 2023.
I mean, if it's even half as good as Into the Spider-Verse was, then it's going to be pretty amazing.
All right. Michelle, 10 years, huh? 10 years. You can't plan out the next 10 minutes. I can't plan out the next 10 seconds. So, I mean, this is a long time for me.
I guess it's good to know that they have somewhere they're going, because we have multiverses, we've got space stuff, we've got Egyptian gods. So I don't know where they're going. At the beginning of, what I call book 1 of the MCU, we basically knew, okay, we're getting the Avengers, and then eventually we know Thanos was coming. In this, I have no clue yet. None whatsoever.
It's interesting to think that Kevin Feige didn't know when he started putting all these pieces on the board either. So I think he had some sort of idea where the first few years were going anyway, but I don't know about the long term. He did admit he didn't have a long-term plan with the Fantastic Four and the X-Men, the mutants, back when Endgame ended, and that had just happened. So he probably had a few ideas, but he needed to flush them out and stuff like that. So just happy that they now have a plan, whatever that plan is, and they could change the plan. No plan has to be perfect for 10 years. You can change it every year, every movie, sort of thing. So at least they have an idea of where they want to go.
How do you think, though, that they will even mention Chris Evans being Johnny Storm?
They're going to do some tip of the hat to that. Something like Captain America. Hey, you kind of remind me of somebody or something like that. They're going to do that. I mean, as a writer, you'd at least put it in. Whether it makes it into the finale or not, I don't know.
there was a whole bunch of talk that they were going to have some sort of a Sherlock comment when Tony met Doctor Strange, because both Benedict Cumberbatch and Robert Downey Jr. played Sherlock Holmes, but no such reference ever made it into the either Infinity War or Endgame. So I think that might be a bit too on the nose, even for Marvel.
They might have filmed it. You just might not have ever seen it.
But wait, they have a Michael B. Jordan Johnny Storm too. All the Johnny Storms.
Yep.
It'll be interesting to see them all on screen together. If they could ever do that anyway. Well, Anthony, what do we got coming up next in the MCU?
So Hawkeye star Alaqua Cox confirmed that principal photography has commenced on the spin-off series Echo. Cox, who plays the show's protagonist Maya Lopez, posted a picture on Instagram of flowers that she received from Reservation Dogs actor Devery Jacobs, who wished her the best for the first day of filming on April 21st. While this recent update confirms that the production is starting to gain momentum, Marvel Studios and Disney Plus have remained largely tight-lipped about Echo. Little is known about the plot of the series, although Marvel Studios president Kevin Feige previously divulged that Echo will pick up immediately after Hawkeye. Quote, the series will be, we see Maya Lopez go from the end of this series into that series will be the next direct link. So, and arguably the biggest news surrounding Echo is a recent leak that allegedly spoils the inclusion of two major MCU characters in the series. The resume for the show's costume designer Stacey Caballero appears to have unwittingly revealed that both Daredevil and Kingpin will return in Echo, even though Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio are not officially attached to the production.
The other bit of news, which was, I think, important, is that they have received filming permits to film in a couple of small towns in Georgia. And the permits include the scenes or the sets to be devoid of, quote, explosions, gunfire, or big stunts, unquote. So that either means they're doing a lot in post-production, or maybe there's other places where they're actually going to film some action. And I don't know, maybe this will be like a low-key Netflix Defenders series where there's not a lot of action, but even Jessica Jones had some action in all 3 seasons. So I don't know about that, but at least we see that it is continuing. And if it is filming now, what do you guys think? You're talking about a late 2022, early 2023 release on Disney Plus, you think?
2023.
Yeah. Early 2023?
Early sounds about right.
Okay.
Yeah, early to mid, I would say.
Okay. All right. Well, don't worry. For those listeners of the last few weeks, we found something for Chris to talk about this week. Our Disney Plus special correspondent, as Michelle has named him. Chris, why don't you tell us what's going on in the streaming service?
Disney Plus has released a new Daredevil featurette with Charlie Cox. Disney Plus is making it known that Charlie Cox's Daredevil is home with the rest of Marvel's star-studded lineup. A new featurette was released online, which I have not had a chance to watch yet, to reintroduce the former Netflix series, which now streams along with the rest of the Defenders shows on Disney Plus. In the featurette, which is mostly action clips from the series, actor Charlie Cox talks about who Matt Murdock is as a character and what the show means to him. And I think this is a really good move, because if you have somebody who wants to jump straight into whatever they're going to do with Daredevil later, but they either don't have time to watch the entire Daredevil run, or they don't want to have their little kids watch the Daredevil run, maybe this is something they can watch instead and be mostly caught up.
I think this is really cool because it means that Charlie Cox was brought in specifically to film this with Disney. So it's not a Netflix thing. It is Disney doing this, and that they're saying, okay, Charlie, come on. Because the Defenders was really created around Charlie. I would have to go way back in the archives to find out when all the series were announced. Like, was it just Daredevil and then they decided to create the Defenders, or did they have this thought about the Defenders from the beginning and that's why they started with Daredevil? I don't know. Michelle, did you have any remembrance of that?
It really was. I think they were hoping for Defenders, but they held back on the news to see how Daredevil season 1 did. And of course, it was blockbusters, and then we got the others.
Okay, so Charlie Cox is to the Defenders what Stephen Amell was over to the Arrowverse over on CW, because without those two people and their series, their universes would not have been created, basically. So I think this is neat for Charlie Cox to be at least recognized for that on Disney+. All right, we do have some feedback. You guys excited about listening to what our audience has to say?
Of course.
All right.
I love our audience.
Sure.
They're great people.
I'd hug them if I could. We had a couple of tweets from our audience at Lil Too Clinical, or Jesse the Fan Man on Twitter said, "Thanks at Marvel Unlimited for the full library of Moon Knight comics to keep me occupied until next week's episode. Gotta say, love the backstory in this latest one, but would have liked a little bit more action," and he tagged us. So that's a reference to the comics. I mean, Anthony, you've read a book or two about Moon Knight.
Yeah, it's like I said, there was a lot of backstory, but I do appreciate what Marvel Unlimited is doing with the free comics. Each episode, at least for the first couple, there was a QR code that presented itself to allow folks to gain digital access. So the comics that they have released so far are Werewolf by Night number 32 and 33, which is his full origin, the first ever appearance of Moon Knight in that two-part story. Moon Knight number 3 for the third episode, which tells the story of the first time that Moon Knight battled Anton Mogart, aka the Midnight Man. And then Universe X number 6, which is an Earth X story that tells a lot of Khonshu and Moon Knight's creation within the Universe X story and universe that also, as I had indicated, is where Moon Knight gets the rap look on his costume. And the one for the comic that was released for episode 5 is actually Moon Knight Volume 1, Issue 1, which goes into the full telling of his origin story, the creation, the battle with Bushman, etc., etc. So I really like what they're doing there with the comic releases because it's helping folks get into the backstory and get a better understanding of the character.
That's one of the great things about the MCU is you'll be able to go back into whatever run and do some background of it or learn more about the character. That's what got me into Marvel Comics is watching the MCU and doing that. Also, we got a tweet from at Mr. Paracletes. Mr. Paracletes said, at Playcomics Cast, you guys talking about Tim Curry movies. And while he isn't the main character, his performance in Stallone's movie Oscar is entirely worth a watch. So, Anthony, if at Mr. Paracletes knows Tim Curry from Oscar, you think that's all right?
It wouldn't be in my top 5 picks, but, listen, if you appreciate Tim Curry, it doesn't really matter where you enter his filmography from, as long as you're a fan of his oeuvre and you come to appreciate everything that he's done. It doesn't really matter what the entry point is.
As I said on Twitter, with a man who has 240 credits, most of which were fantastic and awesome and stuff like that, you just can't go wrong. It's just picking and choosing, right?
I wonder how many know him from The Hunt for Red October.
That's what I said on Twitter, by the way. It was one of the 2 movies I said was Hunt for Red October. It had a great, it was definitely an ensemble cast, right? So it was kind of the longest day of the modern era with just a ton of great actors. Even Darth Vader is in there. James Earl Jones. All right.
Is that the one that has Sean Connery?
Who just is like, I'm Sean Connery. I'm not even going to try a Russian accent. I'm just going to be Sean Connery. Played a Russian submarine captain. It's amazing.
Most things in there doesn't react well to bullets. Totally in his normal Scottish accent, not in the Russian accent. Oh, yeah. All right, Michelle, what should we do now?
Well, we're actually going to steal the Afterlife boat and head on out.
Anthony, we would be totally lost without you. Thank you so much for taking 3 wayward people all the way through these 5 episodes so far. And I'm sure our audience appreciates you as well. If they want to learn more about you, Doc, Moon Knight, any other character, where should they go?
Well, they can go to our website, capesonthecouch.com. We recently did a 2nd episode on Moon Knight, so you can check that. That released, I believe, last week or the week before. And so all of our episodes are available on there. We're also on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Capes on the Couch, and you can find us on every Podchaser except for Spotify. So just do a search for Capes on the Couch, and there we are. And again, thank you to SP and Michelle and Chris. It's been a joy chatting with you, and I'm definitely looking forward to next week and going in depth on the finale.
I'd like to thank everyone for watching and listening to us. We always appreciate it when you take time out of your day to consume our material. And you can find me on Twitter at @Shell_game.
Yes, taking everybody here who loves the show and with consent shoves it into their friends' ear holes. That is the best way to spread the knowledge about our show. And if you want to hear more from me, you can head on over to playcomics.com, where the latest episode, I talked to David, the head of marketing from Vault. You can hear me not destroy his last name because I just couldn't do it. Get it out. It's really hard. But learn a lot about the marketing side of things about comics. And the next couple weeks are kind of up in the air because we have inventory at work, and sometimes real life gets in the way of podcasting.
And if you want to talk to us about Moon Knight or anything else Marvel related, you can catch us on our Discord server at gonnageek.com/Discord. We actually had a pretty interesting discussion in the spoiler channel after this episode dropped about the amazing performance of Oscar Isaac. So once again, you can find that at gonnageek.com/Discord. Now, until next time, where we talk about the finale of Moon Knight. Thank you for joining us for our penultimate review of Moon Knight. I'm Director SP.
I'm Agent Michelle.
I'm Agent Chris.
And I'm Consultant Anthony.
We'll see everybody next time. Bye.
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 Later, Gators.
Thank you for listening. If you want to leave us feedback, go to gonnageek.com and you will find all our contact information and other shows. You can also visit legendsofshield.com, where you'll find our complete archive of podcasts. The music heard on this podcast is by Kevin MacLeod, found at incompetech.com, and also artists on pond5.com and audiojungle.net. The opinions heard on this podcast are those of the individual hosts and do not represent Stargate Pioneer Productions, Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D., or Gonna Geek. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is the property of the Disney Corporation, Marvel Studios, and ABC. No infringement is intended.
You know, guys, tonight is the NFL draft, right? So I know not everybody here is football fans, but if you were the GM of the team that had the number 1 pick in this year's NFL draft, which MCU superhero character would you choose?
Well, as a Panthers fan whose team just selected what I'm hoping is our franchise left tackle for the next decade, because it's a position we've long needed some stability at, I would be looking for a left tackle. And so for someone with size and speed and a bit of aggression, to say nothing of strength, I would say maybe a Luke Cage, I think would make a good left tackle.
I thought you were going to say Hulk. So yeah, good. Luke Cage, good pick. Good pick.
As a Falcons fan, we need everything. I honestly don't know. I know this is a weak quarterback draft class, so normally I would be thinking quarterbacks. So Captain America seems like a good leader.
There you go.
Gosh, the Colts need everything as well. I would say, I'm thinking, because Captain America's a good choice, but I want She-Hulk on my team.
There you go. There you go. I pick Captain Marvel. Big surprise. All right, everybody. See you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Don't forget on your lads.
Oh, good way. Good one. Good one.
Oh, God.
Great show, guys.
Oh, yeah. Oh.
Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. is copyright 2013 through 2022.